There always seems to be something magical about the snow around Christmas time. And sometimes you would get a very special kind of snow. A kind that would make the happy happier, the giddy giddier, to make a homecoming feel homier, and even make natural enemies friends. This special kind of snow is the first snow of the season. And as anyone could tell you, there always seems to be a certain magic that comes from the very first snow. Especially if it just so happens to fall the day before Christmas. For when the first snow is also a Christmas snow, something wonderful is bound to happen. This is a story about that first Christmas snow. It all begins in a schoolhouse in a small town on Christmas Eve. A group of children inside watched from the window of their classroom, excited to see the blanket of snow coming down, until their teacher called them back to their desks.
Children, back to your seats. The snow can wait. I've hired Professor Hinkle, the magician, to entertain at today's class Christmas party. So pay attention.
But the children weren't really all too excited about this. Not only because they wanted to play out in the snow more, but also because Professor Hinkle just so happened to be the worst magician in the whole world. As was shown through his first magic trick, when he tried to make a rabbit appear by placing 3 eggs inside his silk top hat.
And so, I put the magic eggs into my hat. Abracadabra, to coin the phrase. And voila! The eggs have turned into...
But instead of a rabbit, the 3 eggs came out of his hat and fell on the floor, making a mess. The children were unimpressed with his trick, and Professor Hinkle was very mad that it didn't work.
Where is that rabbit? Hocus pocus, where are you? Bah! The only thing this hat's good for is the trash can.
And the irritated magician tossed his hat toward the trash can, but it bounced off the side and off the floor, and a little white rabbit named Hocus Pocus popped right out. Then he started hopping all around the classroom with Hinkle's hat, giving the kids a good laugh. Then, right at 3 o'clock, the school bell rang, signaling that school was over, and the children all cheered and rushed right out of the classroom.
You desert Hinkle the ouch! For some stupid, frozen water!
Once they got their winter clothes on, they rushed outside the school and immediately began running and playing in the fresh snow. Sledding, having snowball fights, building igloos and snow forts, and best of all for them, building a large snowman. With a broomstick in its hand, a corncob pipe, a button nose, and a pair of eyes made out of 2 perfectly round lumps of coal. The children were very pleased with their snowman. They then tried to come up with a name for it, but couldn't quite agree on one. One of them even suggested naming it Oatmeal.
Oatmeal!
Then one of them, a little girl named Karen, came up with the perfect name for their snowy friend.
How about Frosty?
Frosty?
Yeah, Frosty it is! Frosty the Snowman!
The kids all agreed and cheered, then began to dance and sing around Frosty.
Frosty the Snowman, what a happy, jolly soul, with a corncob pipe and a button nose and 2 eyes made out of coal.
But as they were playing with their new frozen friend, the doors of their school suddenly burst open, and Professor Hinkle came running out, still chasing Hocus Pocus with his top hat.
Come back here, you!
Professor Hinkle chased Hocus Pocus all around the schoolyard until he leapt and grabbed him. But when he did, the wind blew his hat over to Karen, who caught it and placed it on Frosty's head. When she did, something amazing happened. Frosty suddenly came to life!
Happy birthday!
The children and Professor Hinkle were all amazed when they saw this.
That hat brought Frosty to life. It must be magic.
Magic? My hat magic?
Just look.
Just then, another gust of wind blew the hat off Frosty's head, turning him back into a regular snowman. Professor Hinkle quickly caught the hat when it did.
If that hat is magic, I want it back.
But it's not yours anymore. You threw it away.
Don't talk back to your elders, you naughty, naughty little girl.
Professor Hinkle then grabbed Hocus Pocus by the ears and placed him back inside his hat.
And you stay in there. or there'll be no carrots for Christmas.
But you can't take that hat back. It brought Frosty to life.
You saw it happen.
I saw nothing of the kind.
Hocus Pocus popped out of the hat and glared at the magician. He knew full well he saw Frosty come to life just as much as the children did.
Quiet. I can't lose that hat up. It's really got magic now. It'll make me a millionaire magician.
But we saw Frosty come to life, didn't we?
We sure did.
You silly children believe everything you see. When you're grown up, you'll realize that snowman can't come to life.
But we...
Silly, silly, silly.
With that, Professor Hinkle placed the top hat back on his own head and left the school. But even the children knew better than he did.
Aw, Frosty, we don't care what grown-ups say. We know you did come to life.
We know, Frosty. We just know.
Meanwhile, Professor Hinkle was walking through the city streets in a very jolly mood, excited at how much fame the magic hat could bring him. However, Hocus Pocus had other ideas. He knew that hat did indeed belong to Frosty and the children, so while Hinkle was distracted, he quickly switched the hat with a Christmas wreath and started racing back toward the school as fast as his legs could hop. Eventually, he finally made it back to the school and stopped right by the children and Frosty.
Look, the hat's back. Let's see if it'll make Frosty alive again.
So Karen picked up the hat and placed it on Frosty's head. And sure enough, once again, it brought him to life.
Happy birthday! Hey, I said my first words. But snowmen can't talk. All right, come on now. What's the joke? Could I really be alive? I mean, I can make words. I can move. I can juggle. I can sweep. I can count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 6, 8. Well, I can count to 5. What do you know? I'm even ticklish. In fact, I'm all living. I am alive. What a neat thing to happen to a nice guy like me.
There must have been some magic in that old silk hat they found. Oh, when they placed it on his head, he began to dance around.
Frosty the Snowman was alive as he could be, and the children say he could laugh and play just the same as you and me.
Suddenly, Frosty stopped and began to feel a little warm.
Uh-oh.
What's the matter, Frosty?
Whew. Is there a thermometer around here?
Over there in the wall. Why?
Frosty looked over at the thermometer and saw it go up. This was bad news to a snowman like him.
When the thermometer gets all reddish, the temperature goes up. And when the temperature goes up, I start to melt. And when I start to melt, I get all wishy-washy.
Then you've got to go someplace where you'll never melt.
The only place I'd never melt is the North Pole.
Then we've got to get you there.
Yeah! We'll take you downtown to the railroad station and put you on a train.
Great! I always wanted to see the town. Let's make a party out of it. Let's have a parade.
The children all cheered when Frosty said this, and grabbing his broomstick, they began to march out of the schoolyard and down the city street.
Frosty the Snowman knew the sun was hot that day, so he said, let's run and we'll have some fun now before I melt away.
As Frosty and the children marched their way through town, everyone they passed couldn't help but turn and stare in complete disbelief. They were shocked and amazed to see a snowman come to life and march his way through the city streets.
Down to the village with a broomstick in his hand, running here and there all around the square, saying, catch me if you can.
Come on, kids. Follow the leader.
He led them down the streets of town, right to the traffic cop.
And he only paused a moment when he heard him holler, "Stop!"
Stop! Stop! Stop!
And come to a stop they did.
All right. Didn't you see that traffic light?
What's a traffic light?
Up there on the lamppost.
What's a lamppost?
Oh, you want a ticket, wise guy?
I'd love one. To the North Pole, please.
Huh?
You've got to excuse him, sir. You see, he just came to life, and he doesn't know much about such things.
Oh, well, okay, if he just came to life. Move along! That silly snowman. Once they come to life, they don't know nothing. Come to life?
The traffic cop was so surprised when he realized this, he accidentally swallowed his own police whistle. Eventually, Frosty and the kids made it to the train station. He and Karen then stepped up to the ticket clerk.
We'd like a ticket to the North Pole, please.
Well, North Pole? Oh, yes, ma'am.
And the ticket clerk got to work printing out a very, very long train ticket for Frosty, all the way to the North Pole.
Route you by the way of Saskatchewan, Hudson Bay, Nome, Alaska, the Klondike, and Aurora Borealis. Gotta make a change at Nanook of the North, though. That'll be $3,000.04, including tax.
Unfortunately, there was a bit of a problem with that.
Oh, but we don't have any money.
No money! No money, no ticket.
And the ticket clerk slammed his boots shut. Frosty was now worried. How was he going to get to the North Pole now?
Now I'll never get to the North Pole.
Oh, Frosty, you just can't melt.
Oh, Karen, don't you get all slushy, too.
Then, Hocus Pocus hopped up to Karen and pointed towards something outside a nearby window.
What is it, Hocus? Out the window?
Karen looked to see what Hocus Pocus was pointing at. Outside on a siding was a little freight train heading northward, consisting of a small steam engine and its tender, a refrigerated boxcar, and its caboose. Karen thought this would be perfect for Frosty.
You'll be safe there, Frosty. Come on.
So Frosty, Karen, and the rest of the kids ran outside toward the train. They opened up the boxcar door, and inside, they could see it was loaded up with all kinds of frozen treats for the holidays, such as ice cream and even large frozen Christmas cakes.
What a neat way to travel.
Just then, the train's engine began to blow its whistle, signaling it was about to depart. Karen quickly helped Frosty climb into the boxcar.
Hurry up, Frosty. The train is pulling out.
Are you coming to the North Pole, too?
I'm sure my mother won't mind, as long as I'm home in time for supper.
Karen then climbed aboard the boxcar too, and after Hocus Pocus hopped aboard as well, the train began to pull out of the yard and start heading north.
Frosty the Snowman had a hurry on his way, but he waved goodbye saying, "Don't cry, I'll be back again someday."
But as the train was pulling out of the yard, Professor Hinkle, who had finally noticed the switch Hocus Pocus made earlier, came running up and climbed on board the caboose, intent on getting his hands on Frosty's hat.
I must get that hat back. Think nasty, think nasty, think nasty.
He'll be back again someday.
As the train continued steaming northward, Frosty and Hocus Pocus sat comfortably inside the refrigerated boxcar. This was the ideal way to travel for a snowman like Frosty, or for a rabbit like Hocus Pocus, who was kept warm by a thick white furry coat. But not so much for a little girl like Karen.
Are you cold, Karen? Now that's a silly question. You wouldn't be sneezing if you weren't cold.
Well, just a little.
Frosty could see just how cold Karen was getting inside that boxcar and knew he needed to get her out of there as soon as possible. He soon got his chance when a little freight train came to a stop on a siding to let a fast express train pass by. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Frosty picked up Karen, opened the car door, and he and Hocus Pocus jumped off, and just in time too. The moment they got off, the train began to pull out of the siding and continue on its way. But not before they saw Professor Hinkle aboard the caboose, who was shocked to see they had gotten off the train.
Oh, you tricked me! No fair!
Professor Hinkle then jumped from the caboose, but this turned out to be a mistake. He tumbled down the hillside and crashed right into a tree, causing the snow on it to fall all over him, leaving him out cold in the cold. Frosty, now knowing that Hinkle was after them, headed into the woods to get as far away from him as possible before he came to his senses. But as he traveled through the woods, still carrying Karen in his arms, a bitter cold wind began to blow through them. Even Hocus Pocus was starting to feel the cold, but it was even worse for Karen.
Hocus, I've got to get Karen all warmed up, or she's a goner.
Hocus suggested to Frosty that he could make a fire to help Karen warm up, but there was a big problem with that.
But I can't make a fire? Oh boy, that's one thing I really can't do. Guess we just better keep moving till we find someone who can.
So they continued making their way through the woods until they came to a small glen, and when they did, they saw a magical sight. A group of woodland animals were decorating many trees in the glen with ornaments, garland, lights, and many more in preparation of their big Christmas celebration. They knew Santa Claus would be coming that very night and wanted everything to be just right. Frosty and Hocus Pocus were amazed at what they saw. Then Frosty suddenly got an idea.
Hocus, speak to the animals. See if they won't all pitch in and build a fire for Karen.
So Hocus Pocus told the animals about Karen's situation, and they were more than happy to help. They found a nice open area away from the glen so the fire wouldn't catch on to the trees, gathered up plenty of firewood, and after rubbing them hard against each other, in no time at all, they had a nice warm fire crackling away. Frosty was happy that he was finally able to get Karen some warmth. But even so, he still needed to keep a good distance from the little campfire to keep himself from melting. Not only that, both he and Hocus Pocus knew they couldn't stay in the woods forever.
We've got to find someone to help Karen get home before she freezes, and me to the North Pole before I melt. But who?
Hocus Pocus came up with a few ideas on who could help, even suggesting the U.S. Marines and even the President of the United States himself. But Frosty wasn't so sure about them.
They were both swell ideas, but we've got to find someone nearby.
It was then that Hocus Pocus came up with the perfect person to help them, Santa Claus himself.
Yeah, Santa Claus. That's a great idea. Hocus, you go back with the animals, and when Santa comes, you bring him right here, understand? Hurry now!
So Hocus Pocus hopped up to join the animals in the glen and wait for Santa to arrive. As Frosty waited through the night, Karen still kept herself nice and warm by the fire, until suddenly, Professor Hinkle jumped in front of her, taking her by surprise.
Oh, a campfire. Well, isn't that all snug and comfy?
And with a big hug, Hinkle blew out the fire. Frosty had seen everything and came running to them.
No, don't!
Now, give me that hat or else.
Or else what?
Well, don't bother me with details. Give me that hat.
Professor Hinkle then leapt at Frosty, but Frosty just managed to get out of the way in time. Then he got down beside Karen.
Get on my shoulders, Karen.
Once Karen climbed on the Frosty, he then slid down the hillside on his belly at great speed. You see, since Frosty was made out of snow himself, this made him the fastest belly whopper in the world. So he and Karen had Professor Hinkle far outdistanced as he desperately ran after them. like a coyote trying to chase a speedy roadrunner. Soon, Frosty and Karen made it to the bottom of the hill, and much to their luck, had stopped by a little greenhouse. Inside, they could see it was being used to grow tropical poinsettias for Christmas. Frosty thought this would be the perfect place for Karen to get all warmed up.
It's got to be all warm and snug inside for those Christmas flowers to grow so beautiful. Let's go in.
Oh, but you will melt.
Just a little. I'll only stay inside for a minute. Besides, I've been meaning to take off a little weight anyway.
So Frosty carried Karen into the greenhouse. But even after being in there for just a few seconds, Frosty was already beginning to feel the heat.
Stay in here much longer and I'll really make a splash in the world.
But while they were inside, they hadn't noticed Professor Hinkle had finally managed to catch up to them, completely exhausted. And once he saw them, he slammed the greenhouse's door shut, trapping them inside.
Now I've got you! And the minute you're all melted, the hat will be mine!
Just then, the distinctive sound of jingle bells came from above. And sure enough, Santa Claus came flying in on a sleigh, guided by his team of reindeer. But was he too late? Once he landed in the glen, Hocus Pocus explained the situation with Frosty and Karen to him. Santa understood what he said to him, so they both went to look for them on the hill. When they didn't find them there, they followed the trail Frosty made when he slid down the hill down to the greenhouse. When Professor Hinkle saw them approaching, he quickly hid behind a tree as they arrived at the greenhouse. But when they stepped inside, they came upon a terrible sight. There in front of them was a large puddle of water, with Frosty's corncob pipe and top hat lying in it, and Karen kneeling beside it, crying sadly. This could only have meant one thing. Frosty had completely melted.
Frosty the Snowman was a happy, jolly soul with a corncob pipe and a button nose and two eyes made out of coal.
They were too late.
Too late? Why, nonsense. Oh, don't cry, Karen. Frosty's not gone for good. You see, he was made out of Christmas snow, and Christmas snow can never disappear completely. Oh, it sometimes goes away for almost a year at a time and takes the form of spring and summer rain. But you can bet your boots that when a good, jolly December wind kisses it, it'll turn into Christmas snow all over again.
Yes, but he was my friend.
Just watch.
And when Santa opened up the door, a gust of that magical December wind blew inside, picked up the puddle, and carried it back outside, turning Frosty back into a snowman, looking just as good as when the kids first made him back at the school. Then Hocus Pocus hopped in carrying Frosty's hat, ready to bring him back to life once again. But just before Karen could place it on Frosty's head...
Wait a minute! I want that hat, and I want it now.
Professor Hinkle once again tried to make a grab for the hat, but then Santa Claus stepped in front of him.
Don't you dare touch that.
And just what are you going to do about it?
If you so much as lay a finger on the brim, I'll never bring you another Christmas present as long as you live.
Professor Hinkle stood in shock at the threat Santa gave him. Never receive another Christmas present for the rest of his life?
Never?
Never.
No more trick cards or magic balls or...
No more anything.
Oh, that's not fair. I mean, we evil magicians have to make a living too.
Now you go home and write, I am very sorry for what I did to Frosty 100 zillion times. And then maybe, just maybe, mind you, you'll find something in your stocking tomorrow morning.
A new hat, maybe?
Oh, yes, sir. Goodbye, everyone. Sorry to lose and run, but
I've got to get busy writing. Busy.
And with that, Professor Hinkle ran back toward town to get to work writing his extremely long apology.
Come on, Frosty. We're all waiting for you.
And Santa placed the hat back on Frosty's head, once again bringing him back to life, much to Karen's delight.
Happy birthday!
Frosty the Snowman is a fairy tale, they say. He was made of snow, but the children know how he came to life one day.
And so, after bringing Frosty back to life, Santa first brought Karen back home before taking Frosty to the North Pole. Karen was sad to have to say goodbye to him, but she knew it was for the best. Santa promised to bring back Frosty every year along with the magical Christmas snow. And every year when he did, there was a big celebration with a spectacular Christmas parade.
Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump thump.
Look at that Frosty go
Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump thump.
over the hills of snow. Frosty the Snowman was a jolly, happy soul with a corncob pipe and a button nose and two eyes made out of coal.
And so, with Frosty the Snowman, Christmas was always very merry indeed. And I hope all of you have a very Merry Christmas too.
Frosty the Snowman had to hurry on his way.
But he waved goodbye, saying, "Don't you cry."
I'll be back on Christmas Day.